Mathias Cormann, welcome to Capitol Hill.
Good to be here.
We had economic figures out this week showing the economy is growing, that growth is more broadly based than just the resources sector, although that's still driving the economy. Consumers are spending as well as saving. That's a pretty good picture, isn't it?
We have had solid levels of growth for consecutive quarters now since the floods earlier in the year, and we've certainly welcomed that. It beggars belief, though, that at the time the national accounts show that our economy is growing strongly, that Wine Swan has just delivered another $26 billion blowout in our debt and a $16 billion blowout in our deficit. So, I mean, surely at a time when the economy is growing strongly, the Treasurer should finally be able to deliver better budget performance.
But he has charted a course back to surplus, and it will, if he hits it, be a very big turnaround in the budget in just 1 year.
Wine Swan always gets his forecasts wrong. I mean, this time last year, Wine Swan was telling us that the deficit this year would be $12.3 billion. And over the last 12 months, the expected surplus has more than tripled to $37 billion. And of course, back at budget time, 6 months ago, we were told it was going to be $22.6 billion. So who knows what is going to happen next year? I mean, Wine Swan wants us to believe that somehow, miraculously, after a $25 billion deterioration in the deficit this year, in the budget this year, over the last 12 months, and somehow next year, miraculously, there is going to be this massive turnaround and this $1.5 billion surplus delivered. We find that quite unbelievable. That's certainly not his track record.
But Wine Swan doesn't come up with these calculations himself. They come from Treasury. Do you have no confidence in what Treasury is forecasting?
We have confidence in Treasury, but ultimately, as the Treasurer, Wine Swan clearly drives a lot of the assumptions. And I just point to the mining tax revenue estimates, for example. It was Wine Swan, Julia Gillard and Martin Ferguson that negotiated this deal exclusively and in secret with the three big mining companies. It was the three big mining companies, we were told, that provided the commodity price assumptions, which is why the Treasurer says that they can't share them with us. So there was no Treasury involvement at that point in time, and of course ever since the mining tax revenue estimates have had to be downgraded. I mean, there are a lot of question marks around the estimates that are in the budget, and of course the biggest thing is that we've got a very high spending government in Canberra at the moment, and from every mid-year economic and fiscal overview to the budget, from the budget to the next mid-year economic and fiscal overview, the budget keeps deteriorating. Wine Swan has delivered 4 out of 4 deficit budgets, and of course, you know, it's very hard to believe that somehow, miraculously, there will be this turnaround next year.
But didn't the national accounts this week show that government spending is being pulled back, and didn't the growth figure seem to indicate that the growth figures for the next 2 financial years in the budget update are achievable?
Well, what the national accounts showed, that the economy was growing strongly, mostly on the back of strong performance of the mining sector and of the construction sector, also related to the mining sector. And of course, that is the sector of the economy that the government wants to hit with the mining tax. And of course, everybody is going to be hit with a job-destroying carbon tax. And of course, if you look at the state of the economy in the non-mining sector, this is the last thing that manufacturing needs right now, and it's the last thing that the economy needs at a time when there's still serious storm clouds on the horizon out of Europe and other parts of the world.
Both during the global financial crisis and now, the opposition seems to underplay the hit the economy gets and that revenue gets from the international events. How much impact is the upheaval in Europe having on the budget, in your view?
Well, I mean, there have always been significant issues happening internationally. I mean, when we were last in government, we had the Asian economic crisis, we had tsunamis in the region, there's always issues to be managed. And yes, there was a significant global economic downturn, in the period 2008-09, and there is significant storm clouds on the horizon now. But as you've just said, our national accounts actually show that the Australian economy is growing strongly, and it beggars belief that at a time when the economy is growing strongly, that we can't do more to put ourselves in a stronger position. I mean, ultimately, the government should live within its means. When the economy grows strongly is a time when we actually should be delivering surplus budgets to pay off debt.
There's a very strong pipeline of investment the Treasurer keeps referring to, some hundreds of billions of dollars. If companies were going to be so spooked by the carbon tax and the mining tax, that pipeline wouldn't be there, would it?
Well, I mean, ultimately, the policy decisions of today will have an impact over the medium to long term. And of course, what's happening now is because of decisions that have been made some time ago. I mean, if you look at the Treasury's own figures, the carbon tax will cost the Australian economy $1 trillion between now and 2050. And that is based on the government's own Treasury modelling.
But companies have known for some time that the government wanted to put a price on carbon. They've known for some time that a mining tax was going to be introduced. Well,
the carbon tax that the government is imposing on Australia is the biggest, hardest hitting, most complex price on carbon anywhere in the world. There's no precedent for it. The carbon tax that the government is pursuing will push up the cost of everything. It will make businesses in Australia less competitive internationally. It will result in lower real wages. And of course, all of that without doing anything to help reduce global greenhouse gas emissions. It's just a really dumb idea.
You've mentioned that now's the time for the government to be paring back its own spending. In 2 years' time, on the current poll numbers, you could well be in government. Tony Abbott's committed the coalition to an expensive paid maternity leave scheme that benefits those in the cities on higher income more than those in rural and regional Australia. He says he'll introduce tax cuts and pension rises. He says he'll keep the superannuation increase. Can you promise all this spending and not yet map out a course of saving as well?
The extraordinary thing about Labor's management of the budget is that they're introducing two massive new taxes, the carbon tax and the mining tax, and each one of them actually leaves the budget worse off to the tune of billions and billions of dollars. As the government is introducing a new tax, not only our household budget is going to be worse off as a result of the carbon tax, but the federal budget is going to be worse off too. The same with the mining tax, because as the government is preparing itself to collect more revenue, they've already spent way more than what they're expecting to raise.
But if you promise tax cuts, even small tax cuts cost the budget billions of dollars a year. Now, you won't have a carbon tax or mining tax to fund those. Do you need to, as the next year rolls out, say exactly how those things will be paid for?
Of course we do, and we will. I mean, and the coalition currently is going through a very comprehensive, detailed process through the Expenditure Review Committee. Let me give you this assurance. The coalition government will deliver lower, fairer and simpler taxes than the Labor government.
And will people know well before the next election, or will it be something that is unveiled during the election campaign when people only have a matter of just a couple of weeks or a few days to have a look at it?
People will know in good time before the next election so that they can make an informed judgment as they make their decision at the ballot box.
Mathias Cormann, thank you very much for your time.
Good to talk to you.